It was just another Wednesday morning at Lincoln Middle School. The fluorescent lights flickered slightly above the heads of bored eighth graders, slouched in their chairs and doodling in the margins of their math tests. Outside, the wind rattled the windows, signaling the change from fall to a bitter winter. The classroom smelled of pencil shavings, sweat, and the faint remnants of someone's forgotten peanut butter sandwich. For most students, it was just another day. But for one student, 13-year-old Jake Thompson, it was a cry for help that would change everything. Mrs. Lawson, the eighth-grade math teacher, walked slowly between the rows of desks, her heels clicking against the tile floor. She was a kind woman in her early 40s, known for her warm smiles and ability to make even fractions seem interesting. She prided herself on knowing her students, not just their names, but their moods, their quirks, and their silent struggles. Jake sat near the back of the room, scribbling on his test paper. His eyes were dull, his cheeks sunken slightly. He hadn't said much in class that week. Mrs. Lawson had noticed, but she chalked it up to normal teenage mood swings at first. As she passed his desk, she glanced down out of habit, scanning the test to see how he was doing. And then she saw it. In the top corner of the paper, just above a half-solved algebra problem, Jake had written, in shaky capital letters, "Help me." It wasn't part of any answer. It wasn't even a joke. There were no smiley faces, no doodles, no LOL written beside it. Just those two words. Urgent, quiet, terrifying. Mrs. Lawson paused for just a moment, not long enough to alert the other students, then continued walking as though nothing had happened. Her heart pounded in her chest. She waited until the test was over, collecting each paper with a neutral expression. When she reached Jake's desk, she gave him a long, searching look. "Thanks, Jake," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. He didn't meet her eyes, just nodded. Once the classroom was empty, Mrs. Lawson locked the door and sat at her desk. She pulled out Jake's test and stared again at the words. There was something in them, something raw, like an open wound. She thought about calling the school counselor, Mr. Patel, but then hesitated. She knew this couldn't wait for bureaucracy or an appointment slot. Instead, she walked to front office and requested an immediate meeting with the principal. Minutes later, Principal Jenkins leaned over the desk in his office, eyebrows raised. "He wrote what?" he asked, holding the paper. "Help me," Mrs. Lawson repeated. "That's not something a kid writes for no reason." Principal Jenkins nodded slowly. "I agree. Let's call him, Mr. Patel, and see what we can do." Jake was called down to the counselor's office later that afternoon. His first reaction was fear. Not the kind of nervousness that comes with being sent to the principal. This was different, deeper. As he sat across from Mr. Patel, the counselor gave him a warm smile. "Hey, Jake, just want to check in with you. I saw your math test. Mrs. Lawson showed it to me." Jake looked down at his shoes. His hands trembled slightly in his lap. "You wrote, 'Help me,' on the page. Can you tell me what's going on?" There was a long silence. Then Jake looked up, his eyes red. "I didn't think anyone would notice." "I did," Mr. Patel said gently. "We care about you. Talk to me." And then, slowly, Jake began to unravel a story that stunned every adult in the room. That Jake's home life was nothing like the school imagined. His father had left when he was 6. Since then, it had just been him and his mother. Or rather, what was left of her. She had fallen into addiction. Pills at first, then something stronger. The house was often cold. The fridge was often empty. And some nights, Jake slept on the floor of his closet because it was the only place he felt safe. But it wasn't just neglect. Lately, his mother's new boyfriend had started staying over. And when he drank, which was often, he would get angry, violent. At first, it was just shouting. Then came the slaps. Then punches. Jake had bruises on his ribs. He hadn't eaten a real meal in 2 days. He didn't know who else to tell. He didn't want to be taken away. He didn't want to be a burden. So he wrote, "Help me," on the only piece of paper he thought someone might actually look at, a test. And someone did. Immediately after hearing Jake's story, the school contacted Child Protective Services. Within hours, a caseworker arrived at the school to speak with him. Photos were taken, documents filed. That night, Jake didn't go home. He was placed in temporary foster care with a trained family in the area. Mrs. Lawson stayed late at school that night. Sitting alone in her classroom, she looked at the stack of tests still left to grade, but she couldn't focus. Her mind was on Jake, on how close he had come to slipping through the cracks. The next morning, she visited Mr. Patel's office first thing. "How is he?" she asked. "He's safe," the counselor said. "He's scared, but he's safe." Mrs. Lawson nodded, tears in her eyes. Over following weeks, Jake began therapy. He moved to a new foster home, one that allowed pets and had a backyard. His new foster mother, Mrs. Delgado, was patient and kind. She made pancakes on Sundays and left little notes in his lunchbox. At school, Mrs. Lawson made sure Jake's transition was gentle. He was allowed extra time on tests, regular check-ins with Mr. Patel, and breaks when things became overwhelming. Slowly, Jake began to smile again. He joined the art club, made a new friend in science class. He wasn't fixed, because that's not how trauma works. But he was healing. For the first time in years, Jake felt seen. 3 months after the test, Mrs. Lawson found an envelope on her desk. There was no name on the outside. She opened it and found a letter written in messy but heartfelt handwriting. "Dear Mrs. Lawson, thank you for seeing me. I don't know where I'd be if you hadn't noticed what I wrote. I was scared. I didn't think anyone cared. But you did. You saved me. I hope one day I can do something like that for someone else. Jake." Mrs. Lawson folded the letter carefully and placed it in her desk drawer. It stayed there for the rest of her teaching career. 5 years passed. Mrs. Lawson had seen hundreds of students come and go. Some remembered her, some didn't, but she never forgot Jake. Then one morning, as she was unlocking her classroom door, she heard someone call her name. "Mrs. Lawson?" She turned. A tall young man stood in the hallway, a little older than her current students, holding a small envelope in one hand. It was Jake. He smiled shyly. "I just wanted to say thank you in person this time," he said. He handed her the envelope. Inside was a graduation photo and a note. "Going to college next year. Studying psychology. I want to help kids the way you helped me." Mrs. Lawson felt tears spring to her eyes. She hugged him. "I'm proud of you, Jake. I'm alive because of you." He whispered Jake's story as a powerful reminder that sometimes the smallest signs can hide the biggest cries for help. A simple phrase, "help me," written in pencil on a piece of paper, was all it took to change the course of a life. Teachers, counselors, friends, we never know when we might be the lifeline someone needs. Sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is ask for help. And sometimes the greatest gift another can give is to answer